Newcombe?
I think John pointed on something that's really important to see here. There appears to be a lack of trust with us, and the lack of trust in our ability to look at the issue, to explore the pros and the cons, and then make a decision on that. I think we see this a lot with some of the more complex issues. I would agree that something should be done. There's a lot of traffic that comes in there, and parking is a problem there. My experience on the DDA has shown me that parking isn't just putting up a deck, it's nuanced. And like everything, you have to plan accordingly. The U of M is able to follow their own rules and design, and they tend to put up nice structures, but they also don't have the same requirements as we put on our other decks. And so I gotta agree on this one, is that you can't say that it may be a great place for a train station. Any place may be a great place for a train station. When anybody tells you about phase 2 or phase 3 without even digging the shovel on phase 1, they're trying to sell you what's not really there. And so I think before we move forward at any pace, we have to realize that we need the truth about what it is, and we need city officials to trust us to make the decision, because it is our land.
Okay. The next question, Newcombe, we'll start with you on this one. Last month, City Council voted unanimously to reappoint a task force to address the issue of aggressive panhandling. The question is, how serious of a problem is panhandling downtown, and is the reappointment of this task force the solution?
I won't equate or presume to believe that the task force won't produce, a viable solution for it. I think what we saw happen in a very quick amount of time with the elimination of the downtown beats has reflected itself in aggressive panhandling that we haven't seen the likes of in at least 10 years, the 10 years I've been living close to downtown. I think the presence of 2 armed robberies on the same block, a block that was regularly policed by our beat cops within 3 months of each other, is telling that there's something going on. And whether or not a task force will solve the problem, I do believe there's a problem. And while I think there should always be community input, there should certainly be compassion for those that are down on their luck or modest means, let's listen to the experts. The police themselves say the problem is there isn't enough resources to patrol. There isn't enough resources to be proactive. We've got a great cop force, but they're half their numbers of a decade ago. And they do a good job at catching people when they commit crimes, but they're the first to admit that they could be a lot better in stopping some of the issues we're seeing downtown.
Okay. John?
Well, Newcombe has not said anything I disagree with. I think that I'm not holding out a lot of hope that a new task force will come up with something new. The laws we have now have been vetted against First Amendment rights to panhandle, and I think we probably have the tightest legal structure we can. I think Newcombe's right. Having more policemen to enforce what's already on the books probably is the best solution. I note that as we try to make Ann Arbor not necessarily more urbane, but more urban, we are likely to attract more panhandlers. Someone I've spoken with who works closely with the homeless has described them as hunter-gatherers, and as long as there are things to hunt and gather, they will be here. My church tried to create a structure to make it easier for homeless people to sleep on the grounds, and it only created a giant mess. So I don't know that there is an easy solution to this. I think we do need to find places for people to live that aren't necessarily in the street, and perhaps the encampments that have circled Ann Arbor are a partial answer to that. But I think that providing places where people can live has to be keeping panhandling within the laws we have now.
Okay, thank you. John, we begin with you on this one. This question comes from our audience that's with us this evening. The question is, how do you define the downtown? And alternatively, is the downtown constrained by a quote-unquote density membrane, as some would have the public believe?
Well, as an old-time Ann Arborite, I think of downtown as being everything from west of Division Street and ending at about 1st Street, east and west, and running from, let's say, City Hall, roughly down to Fingerly Lumber, north-south. Might shave a little bit of that off. Excuse me, on the south end, the public library is where I'd cut that off. I know that there is a more expansive view that includes the campus and State Street areas around downtown. A density bubble, if you mean the zoning that keeps the old home neighborhoods that surround downtown intact, I think there is such a bubble, and I think it's a good thing. I think that those old neighborhoods that surround downtown are what give us our geographically unique built environment. And I think that enhancing those, not tearing them down, is likely our best economic asset. If we want to differentiate ourselves from other progressive communities, particularly those in the Sun Belt, who may have advantages of geography and climate we don't have. Our look and feel, I think, is one of the unique things we have. So I would rather use, I think, historic districts to support those neighborhoods. But I think the density restrictions do keep high density things inside of the downtown area.
Okay. Newcombe?
I believe you're downtown if you feel you're downtown. I believe you live downtown if your neighbor feels that you live downtown. Yes, recently some zoning efforts have attempted to tie it to the DDA boundary. The DDA boundary, for its part, is a tax boundary. It doesn't speak to radial proximity. It doesn't speak to character. It doesn't speak to that feeling you get when you know you're a downtown resident and the advantages you enjoy from using this as your playground and your kitchen and the place where we come together as a community. I know that there is certainly some questions of my feelings about this particular issue in relation to some of the projects I've been involved. Well, there's two things I'd say there. One, it certainly would be my preference as a city council member to bring more housing downtown, and I'd like to do it on some of our surface parking lots. There are assets right now that aren't making us any money. I mean, they're making the DDA some money, but by any set of best standard practices, that's not the best use for that land. And you want to take some pressure off the neighborhoods because there is a demand for more housing. That's why you have projects like ours. You can bring some of those lots into better use, and in the short term, get some money into the general fund from some sales. Now, I think it's interesting that in relation to those projects just south of the library, you have an incumbent that seems it's in the city's best interest to tear down those houses rather than save them. He voted for the City Place development, but so far refuses to work with the development team to save the houses. And I think that's really an interesting stance when you claim to protect neighborhoods and believe in neighborhoods, and then you stick your head in the sand when you don't get what you want.